So hi everyone again. Thank you for doing a little break in your programming to be here to listen to Paulo. I know that all of you want to win a prize, but a little bit of resting and relaxing, I think, also do well. So we are going to have our second workshop of the day. It will be with Paulo from Worten. It will be around AI for programmers, time savers, and game changers. I'll give the floor to Paulo. Paulo, please, the floor is yours. Just, yeah, exactly. So please, feel free.
Hi all. First of all, let me share the presentation. There you go. Okay, so before I start, what this presentation is about and what is not about. The first thing that I must tell you is that it is unwise to trust the AI at this point in time as a fountain of truth. Because basically, as you wouldn't trust AI to give you financial advice or advice on your love life, you shouldn't trust it completely to give you advice on how to code something. The problem with those things is just like in your love life or financial market or whatever, AI tells you stuff that looks real, that looks good, that looks nice, that you wouldn't write in 2 seconds. But there are pitfalls in that. For instance, if you use ChatGPT to talk about the best cameras in phone, you'll see that usually ChatGPT gets the wrong specifications of the current cameras on the second paragraph, typically. The same goes for programming with AI. Some suggestions are great. Small programs and small scripts, usually you can get away with asking ChatGPT or using Copilot to get them up and running with great results. But the same does not happen in larger problems and without context. AI is evolving fast. It's still not there. I know this is not going to age well in a few years. This would probably be something barbaric to say. At this point in time, you must use AI with the mind of someone who knows what he's doing. Meaning you have to be a good programmer to really take advantage of AI for something over a couple of hundred lines of code. So the first thing that we must figure out is that AI is useful already. It's pretty damn useful. As you type code, AI will make suggestions. AI will help you document the code, something every programmer in the world hates doing. AI will write you unit testing function, which is a freaking pain in the butt. And AI makes all that relatively painless if you know what you're doing, because you are literally the only obstacle between AI and the bug. So you must know how to read code. Usually you know how to write code, and you use AI as an accelerator, not as a replacement. AI is nowhere near being able to replace good programmer with experience, with creativity, with understanding of the problems that is going to solve. My motto usually goes like this: if AI presents me a code that is in line in the way that I would write it, it's probably a good start. If it presents me with something outlandish that I would never write in my life, I usually scrap it, continue code, because more suggestions will appear as your code evolves. Okay, the first topic where AI is really useful is code generation, completion, and suggestions. How does this go? When you start typing in an IDE with AI enabled, usually in Copilot, the other alternative is ask ChatGPT or chat with Copilot for code. When you start writing code, you usually should have an idea of the skeleton of the application. You should know what building blocks build that application. I usually start by naming my classes, my function, how they will mix together, and give AI some hints on what I'm going to build and what are the building blocks. That's usually a great way to start coding. You write the skeleton code, which is almost pseudocode, and AI will start filling up the blanks. But if you start without that skeleton, what AI is going to do is pick up somebody else's skeleton, usually in the wrong context, and everything goes downhill from there. So instead of gaining time, you start wasting time. The best way to code is start coding yourself. And when AI starts making sense, use it. Use those inputs when it becomes logical. One other thing that AI does is accommodate your patterns of code to the people around you. Meaning, AI studies basically the organization code library and starts giving you hints on how other people in your team would write that specific piece of code. This is incredibly useful because you don't write code for yourself. You don't write code for the organization. You don't write code for it to work, or for it to just work. You write code that will be maintained over time. You write code for others to read that code. You write code that others will have to pick up and eventually change in the future. So writing great code means that you know that you're writing code that is going to be read by someone else. This is the mark of a great programmer. I'm exaggerating a bit, but everyone can pretty much look like a great programmer just because they wrote code that actually worked, or actually worked for the first few couple of times. Those are not great programmers. Those are just programmers. Basically, any useful piece of code, as light and as simple as it looks in the moment that is written, will be changed in the future. If you know Linux, and if you know the userland utilities like dir, ls, and df, all those single pieces of code, they have been maintained for 20 years, 30 years over time. And it's amazing how a simple utility can have so many changes along its life cycle. So what I'm saying is, basically, programmers have the illusion that no one will see their code in the future. This is always wrong. If the code is unmaintained, it will probably stop working at some point in time because processor changes, OS changes, everything changes around it. So someone will have to maintain that code. Even if it's you that will maintain your own code, I can assure you, you won't recognize a single line of code after 6 months. Worse than that, after 6 months, you look at your own code and you say, this is horrible. Who was the asshole that coded this? And you recall the memory that it was you 6 months before that. This happens all the time. So AI is pretty useful in standardizing code, in establishing code patterns, in rewriting code pretty much the same way that you would do it over time, and it grows on you. You learn to use AI, AI learns to work with your way of thinking, and this can lead to tremendous results. However, it's not a great way to start. I usually say that programmers in their first couple of years, not couple of weeks, professionally should never use AI except to ask questions in something like ChatGPT. From those questions, you learn stuff. That's okay. Copying and pasting code is a way not to learn, because basically you're never creating the structure of your own program. You're basically using somebody else's idea or approach to solve a certain problem. And you need to train your brain to start solving problems and organizing the solutions. You'll never be a great programmer if you borrow that from someone or from some AI. Second point, just activate. Bug detection and debugging. First of all, AI is wonderful at creating bugs. One of the things that you learn as your program grows is that AI is almost as great as giving you bugs uh, as it is in solving them or analyzing them. AI is a great tool for you to pick up a snippet of code and ask him to access vulnerabilities, potential vulnerabilities in your code. And it will do it pretty damn well. The amazing stuff was that sometimes you're analyzing code created by the same AI that gave you the code that it soon finds out it's an awful piece of cheese with lots of holes, and you would never know if you didn't analyze it with the same AI that created it. One other problem with debugging, which, by the way, most people don't really know how to do. Most people learn how to code, but since debugging is inherently linked to the IDE that you use and the toolchain that you use to compile or interpret the code, most people actually have a hard time learning to debug. And learning to debug is actually a lot more than half the time you spend programming. Because as soon as you enter an organization with some large application with millions of lines of code, the first thing that you will probably be asked to do is debug something, fix something that is going wrong and nobody knows why. So you'll spend a lot of time reading code and using debugging tools. I know it's a pain, but that's something that you have to bring to your skill set. Otherwise, you're pretty much done. Because there are very few occasions where you will be just creating code. Most of your time spent professionally selling your services will be debugging stuff, will be changing stuff, adding new errors to it, adding new features and capabilities that the original programmer never thought would be in that code. Sometimes that requires something that AI cannot help you with, like rechanging the structure of the code, rechanging the skeleton of the code. And you pretty much have to do it in way over half of your time. Code review and quality assurance is incredibly important. It's something that AI will help you with small snippets. Again, it's very easy to fall in love with AI when you're working with 100 lines of code or 200 lines of code. It's really hard to make the same kind of use of the tools that you have when you have 2 million lines of code or 3 million. It's an old ball game. It's completely different, and you have a different challenge in your hands. But, however, you can break those millions of lines of code in manageable scripts. And if the code is well structured, if it had a good architecture from the beginning, that's really easy to do and a pleasure to work with. Sadly, most of the code that you created and most of the code that you will face in the future is created by monkeys. And you'll feel exactly like this. And you'll curse whoever wrote this code. And from my experience, some of the time you have. So you'll curse yourself because it's completely unreadable. It lacks the proper documentation, the proper the proper comments, and some of the times it was written without the slightest clue about future changes and future expansions of that code base. So AI will help you. AI will help you analyze some small segments of code and really be useful in stating something like you have to check boundaries in this case. You have to be aware of SQL injections. You have to be careful with the way you're allocating memory or whatever. There's a memory leak there, something like that. It will be useful in certain portions of that code. However, if bad practices were followed, there's no way AI can figure out that global variable or global pools of memory have been allocated outside those functions or outside those classes. So For a program with a bad structure, you're pretty much on your own, which is really hard when you're doing it professionally and people are expecting the problem fix to appear sometime soon in the future. Documentation is a tremendous thing to actually accomplish in code, because basically there are two problems. First of all, no one writes to document the code because everyone thinks that the code is self-documented. You actually read the computer language that you're coding with, and you should figure out what's happening. This is actually true some of the time, but you'll find out that some of your colleagues and some of the people that you work with want to be computer ninjas. And they want to impress the shit out of you, and they want to write code like it was poetry. And they like to obfuscate things because it's a shortcut. It shows how skillful they are in Kung Fu or whatever. And you'll hate those people. Again, some of the time, those people will be you. This happens all the time. And it's really necessary to know how to tell a story. Not how to translate the code to English, but how to tell the story of what the code is solving at certain pieces. And if you read proper documentation of code in long projects, you'll probably find out that you can read it almost like a book, with every paragraph making sense, with every paragraph annexed to a single function or a single class or a single snippet of code that will help you actually understand what's going on. Comments should not be a translation of the code, as I said before. They should be a complement of the code. You're not, just like I'm not reading the slides, and I'm telling a story around the slides. When you code, you have to know how to tell the story behind the code. You have to give the director's comment in a certain film, for instance. You have to know how to tell the story. And if someone is going to pick up a code base with 2 million lines of code, trust me, they will need your help. They will need proper documentation. They will need to understand the story before they even read comments distributed along the code. There's no way for anyone to maintain any major piece of code, any huge chunk of code, without understanding the context, without understanding its fragilities, where the programmer has taken the freedom to apply shortcuts. And this pretty much happens all the time. When I pick up code to maintain, I usually find somewhere along those millions of lines comments like, this is almost a miracle. I have no idea why it works, but it works, so it stays here. I have seen comments from people maintaining code saying, I won't mess with this. I can't figure out what the hell the original programmer was doing. It works. Every time I touch it, it breaks. So I'm not touching it. And these are the hallmarks of bad programmers. And AI can actually help you figure out what the code does, but it will fail miserably some of the time. So you can use AI to both help you document the code and interpret missing documentation. But you have to know what you're doing, because some of the time you'll get the wrong story from the system. Okay, now I'm going to take any questions that you have. Just two last recommendations before passing the microphone to you all. The first thing is, I've been coding for 30 years. When I started coding, I started teaching people how to code, from both teammates to internships in the companies. And one of the things that I told them is that you should start with no tools. Basically, you should use a simple editor, not an IDE, not something that attempts to remind you of what parameters functions say, etc. And all those students over time really hated my guts, because they knew that they could use a simple IDE that would make their life easier. What's my problem with using IDEs and now using AI-generated code sooner than they should. The problem is it's very easy to learn by reading, but it's not a very effective method of learning. Meaning, you actually get a lot better at writing code the more code you write. If you're using an AI, you're basically reading code most of the time, not writing it. And it's not the same thing to your brain. In fact, it really makes perfect and really contributes create good programmers. It's one thing for a great programmer to use a great tool. It's another thing for a bad programmer to use a great tool that creates code that he cannot figure out what the hell he's doing. He can't really understand how it works. He knows it works, but that's not enough because sooner or later, AI will hit the wall, will hit its own limits, and you'll be left on your own. And right now, in the point of your life that you guys are, you can get away with it. But in a professional environment, trust me, it takes a toll on you because people are expecting results. And I've seen way too many people talk to me and saying something like, I really cannot do it. I'm not competent enough. I can't figure out what the hell is happening. And those failures destroy human beings. So it's really important that you take the time to get better. And as soon as you're getting better, use AI, help you write something that you would write yourself. If AI is ahead of you, you're doing it wrong. So use it, have fun. It's great to accomplish the program with 100 or 200 lines. It's great to that. It's great to get university problems and admission test companies. Great for that. AI solves something like 97% of the exercises usually given people applying to companies. So AI is great at that. Problem is, those are the easy part of your job. Getting into a company is actually the easiest part of everything concerning your job. As soon as you get there, you're being examined every day. People are expecting results from you, not your tools. So remember that you have something that AI cannot beat at the time, like a wonderful brain. Make use of it. Okay? And now, any question that you have, I'm here.
Thank you, Paulo. Thank you for your amazing presentation. So, any questions for Paulo? Anyone wants to do a question? So, Paulo, seems your talk was insightful as possible, and I want to thank you to be here with us today, remotely. I'm sad that you cannot be here to see our amazing venue and the ambience that is right now in our Geekathon. But thank you, and I hope that in the next edition you are here with us again. Thank you, Paulo. Thank you. A round of applause.
Have fun, guys.
Thank you. Bye, Paulo. Thank you. Bye-bye.